All right. This is the inaugural meeting of the 1.8 release team, and I'm super thrilled to be here and share this time with you all, and we'll try and make it useful and hopefully wrap up before our time block is over in an hour. So if you don't have the release team meeting minutes, they are located at bit.ly/Kates18release, and I'll post a link again in chat so that you have it. And I would love for you to follow along there. And also sign in, just so we know you are here. And go from there. So without further ado, what I'd love to do is just have a brief introduction. We did some of this in sig-release, but I'd love to, just now that we've got, looks like the majority of the release team here, just have people just introduce who you are, what company you work for, if you're working for yourself or some other project, and also any interesting fact you'd like to share with us, or maybe how long you've been working on Kubernetes, and we'll go from there. So I am going to turn it over to the CoreOS room, which looks like we've got a few people. So go ahead and fire away, you guys.
Hi, my name is Ratika, and I am pretty new here to CoreOS as well as to the Kubernetes team. So my roles would be collecting release notes, and yes, to start with, and interesting facts. I have my ex-colleague in the team, Swarna. Hi, Swarna.
Hey, how are you doing, Radhika?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, that's it.
I'm Eric. I co-lead sig-off in the community, so I may have bugged a few people here before. I was on the last release team doing the testing for the master branch, the ED testing and monitoring, all of that, and I'll be doing it again this release.
Thank you.
I'm Caleb Miles. I also work here at CoreOS. I mostly just hang around in these release meetings. Interesting fact. It's a good question. You'll have to come back.
Fair enough. Thanks, Caleb. Swarna.
Sure. I'm Swarna Padilla. I am in the product marketing team at Avi Networks at a company called Avi Networks. I've been lurking around in the Kubernetes community and the CNCF community teams for a while now, and I thought it's about time I chime in and do something more meaningful than just be on the calls like a fly on the wall. So this will be my first foray into contributing and providing some kind of, at least I hope, meaningful contribution into the team. And as Radhika said, small world, we're back working together again.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Ihor.
Hello, folks. I'm working for the feature stream at Kubernetes 1.8, and I've also been working for the same role with the post releases starting from, as far as I remember, 1.3, when we haven't had a defined release team, so I've been working on features in that period of time. And since 1.6, when we have defined our release team, I also have been holding the features manager role at the release team. And that's mostly the most interesting fact about me. I'm working from Emirates, and I also serving as a CNCF ambassador, mostly in the EMEA region in Europe. Yeah, next one.
Yeah. Jennifer, do you want to go?
Sure. I'll start with my interesting fact. I'm still a Kubernetes neophyte. I've been working for Heptio with Craig McCluskey and Joe Beda since the end of February. So there's far more that I will never learn than many of you, I am sure, have already forgotten. I've joined the team backing up on release notes since, I guess Jace had the notion that it might be a nice idea, a good idea even, to dedicate some resources to the release notes instead of dumping it all on the poor release manager. And when he joined the SigDocs meeting and said, I'm looking for somebody to do this, I failed to sit on my hand.
We'll see how that serves you. No, thank you so much, Jennifer. being brave and stepping forward. That's how it all starts. Hey, Steve, do you want to go next? Speaking of docs.
Sure. Hi, I'm Steve Perry at Google. I've been working on the Kubernetes documentation for about 6 months now, and I'll be the release manager for the 1.8 release for the docs.
Cool. And where do you work at, Steve? Are you an independent contractor?
At Google in Seattle.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. And speaking of Google, Adam, you want to?
Yeah, my name's Adam Worrell. I'm relatively new to Kubernetes. I've probably been here about 4 months. And I work for Google. I'm managing the Node team. So I've been getting pretty involved in some of the projects that involve the Node stuff, in particular images and image testing. That's been a big focus for me recently. That's more tied to GKE than anything else, but at the same time, the results kind of flow out. So we do a lot of GCE testing. I volunteered to be branch manager, partly to try and learn a lot more about the project and get a little bit out of my little small Node box, but also because I think releases are very important and it's somewhere I kind of should spend some bandwidth. I'm new to it. I've spoken to the previous branch manager who wrote an awesome checklist, so I'm full of confidence that branches will be cut and they will actually, they will not fail terribly.
That's so exciting to hear, because the branch manager job is one of those key pivotal points for everything that moves forward. So great. All right, and Sen.
Hey, my name is Dan. I've been working with release team for 1.7 on the testing infra side, because I'm still working on a lot of things related to like retired Jenkins, moving jobs to using Pro, and also a lot of testing infra related stuff. So I'd better volunteer to be the testing infra guy for 1.8 as well. My goal for 1.8 is to make all the jobs to be flowless version. So instead of hard code to be like 1.8, release 1.8, release 1.7, release 1.6 job, it can be like something like kids stable 1, 2, 3. The idea is to make the testing for jobs to be float with version. So I kind of want to say that if that's going well, then we probably don't need this role for 1.9, and our testing for on-call can help with any testing for outage during the release period.
Cool.
Put yourself out of a job, which is a very, very noble plan.
That is a very noble pursuit indeed. Thank you. That's great. Hey, Joe, you up next?
Hi, yeah, I'm Joe Betts. I work on the API machinery team at Google. And this will be my first chance to work on a release. So I'll be the patch manager. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, interesting fact, I spend most of my days focusing on etcd Kubernetes integration.
Cool. And you're not in a padded room. That's good. Let's see. Who have I missed? Who's on the core team? We don't have Aaron here, do we?
Yourself?
Oh, me. Yeah, I'm Jason Singer-Dumars. I work for Microsoft, and before that I was worked at Deus. And before that, I managed operations for companies like SendGrid, Aetna Mobile, and CA Technologies. My background is primarily in ops, so it's interesting to be in the position of an operator type mindset, managing the release process, which I always enjoy because it brings a new perspective. So, my fact, I guess, I play jazz saxophone and I hand engrave musical brass instruments. I'm one of the only people in the world that does it, so it's an interesting gig. In my side time, I also have a farm. So, that's it for me. And also, I've only been working on Kubernetes for 1.5 years. I've done all the release retrospectives since 1.3, and am leader of SIG Azure, SIG architecture, and SIG cluster ops. Cool. So thank you all for the awesome, awesome introductions. It's super exciting, and I'm glad also that other people are on the call too. Anirudh and Phil, and there's somebody else who's also here. And I appreciate you coming because it's good to have more eyes on this. So the agenda, basically, I wanted to go through the introductions. I also want to talk about some release challenges because I don't know if anybody was in the community meeting yesterday or has been sort of staying in touch with what the current churn is around this being a stabilization release, but this is a fairly high touch point in terms of the evolution of Kubernetes releases, because we're seeing the truth of what gets into the release versus the intent of the release come at a loggerhead, and without having the sort of steering committee around to arbitrate that, it's going to fall on our plates to figure out how best to balance the needs of putting feature work out and also managing the stability and promotion of the releases that are currently in alpha to beta and beta to stable. So I want to definitely spend a little bit of time talking about that. But before we do that, I just had a quick list of my own ideas about what the release challenges are. And since we have some experienced prior release team members here, I would love to see this list expand a little bit with things that are missing. So if you're in the agenda right now and you think of things that I haven't covered here, please go ahead and add those things in the list, because I want to just touch through these real quick. So does that sound good to everybody as far as a good use of your time? Cool. And if for some reason this is not a good use of your time, please speak up and let me know how we can make this better. So test infrastructure is a huge issue. As we've seen in the past release and sort of ongoing, there's an issue with brittle tests, especially where we could introduce race conditions or other problems that make blocking tests not pass. There's also flaky tests that have to deal with things that could be indeterminate, like infrastructure that doesn't spin up in an expected period of time, or just ephemeral errors, transitory errors with the underlying cloud infrastructure or the way the code is executed sometimes. So that's something that we're going to have to keep a really tight eye on, and also make sure that in order to maintain velocity, we don't introduce a case where the release queue is blocked for extended periods. We've already had that happen recently with COPS tests, and also with the GCE etcd3 tests that are constantly causing trouble. So I wish Aaron was here to speak a little better, but if anybody wants to talk about how we mitigate this challenge, I would appreciate that.
I can talk about it a little bit. So for the test infra itself, so it was pretty stable during the 1.7 release period. So for our team, we tend to push out new features and new changes during the developing period, and trying to keep everything stable during the freezing period. And if we find, or anyone find, something was breaking due to infra issue, we normally react to it pretty fast. And other than that, one other improvement is we set up the upgrade test and skill test from 1.7 to master early for this release. I remember last release we spent a lot of time on the upgrade tests, charge that, but this time we already have the upgrade test running, and it can produce early signals for us. When I think Phil is also Phil's monitoring it. It's Phil's idea.
Yeah, I can speak to that when you're finished too.
Yeah, you can talk more, but I think it probably can save us a bunch of time rather than when 8 is cut, then we set up the upgrade test and find nothing's working. Yeah, Phil, you can take over.
So I say nothing's working. We know it now, unfortunately. Yeah, so maybe we should differentiate between test infrastructure, which is something Sin's team owns, and how the tests are like set up, for instance, what flags they're given, that sort of stuff, and then just the tests themselves. And if you look at that CD3 tests that have been very flaky, it's like garbage collection tests are failing constantly. I mean, that's one of the ones I've seen failing a lot. I don't think that's actually test infrastructure. It's just a test that fails a lot, either because there's a real bug in the real system or because the test is, like I see flaky tests. And I think those are going to have pretty different solutions and owners.
Right.
Another problem we have, so yeah, as Sim was saying, like upgrade tests has always been the most challenging and unpredictable, or it's predictably bad, I guess, part of a release. And so this release, I pushed really hard, and Sin and I, mainly Sin did most of the work, got it running against the development head against the last release, so we could say, oh, we know when things break. But those are really unhealthy, and they have been for a long time. And I have not been able to get ownership of fixing those. It seems that there's a pretty big gap. Like historically, because they've been in this bad state, it's always been heroics on the part of the release team to fix those at like the final countdown to get those in good shape. And so one thing we encountered this release was, because we've always done that in the past, there wasn't really anyone paying attention to it now, or felt that it was their responsibility to step in and fix them.
Hey, Phil, I was wondering if, like, for this particular, as the person in charge of upgrade tests, because we combine those roles to this release, is it more just that we have to stay on top of it throughout the release and ensuring that, you know, we all don't just check it the week before we release, or is there any specific, you know, things that you feel would help on that end? Is it more just us having better insight into it, or actually just not having proper owners?
It's a combination of things. Like, so for like at the very minimum, we need someone who feels they're responsible for it, and then is going to look at it, and then is going to like do something when it's broken. Like, because we don't have that now, and I'm not saying it's just on that one person to fix it, but like no one looks at it. Okay. Once we have kind of that as just a catch-all, there's a couple of things we need. Like, problems we typically face are test infrastructure is really complex for this piece, and we've run into many times it's like it's just not doing the upgrade properly. That's been a problem in the past, or right now I think it's timing out, and so that we get no signal because the test just times out and it doesn't tell us like how long anything actually took or what caused the timeout. So these sort of systemic problems, and the problem with those is no one is going, like there's no SIG who's going to be like, oh, my test runs in the upgrade piece, so therefore I'm going to take on the fact that like every upgrade test is broken. Once those get kind of worked out, like we need to get past the point of everything's broken and we don't know why, to its specific tests are broken. And once we get to specific tests are broken, I think we can then approach, like the test owners are now in the test names, so we can approach the folks that own those tests and push them to fix those tests.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any kind of monitoring or anything that we can put on that thing to increase visibility? Could we put up a Slack channel or something just for test results, or I don't know. I'm trying to think, what can we do to make that so it's not somebody having to look at it?
There's a master upgrade dashboard on TestGrid. If anyone interested, they can monitor the result, the most recent results there.
Yeah, we have dashboards. People have heard a number of discussions of like, oh, it would be really nice if we had push notifications. I think I was told that issues get filed for all the broken tests. I have seen those issues. One problem is there's just so many issues in general, they kind of get lost in the noise bit. And the other thing you could do is, oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
You're saying when the whole thing's broken, like every job's failing and lots of tests are failing erratically, it's not useful to look at it from like this test failed, specific on this test. Like you said before, we actually got to get things to a point when it's meaningful that a single test has failed. Right now, it just means we're not in a position to even execute tests.
Right. So I think if we start the stuff that's passing and no one looks at it, but we're lucky and it happens to be passing, it'd be useful to have monitoring on that. Maybe issues is the right way. I'm a little bit skeptical about the attention those will get. And then the stuff that's broken, it doesn't make any sense to monitor because it's just broken. One thing that's been working for my team, and I think Federation team does something similar. The Federation team takes ownership of their tests, and they have an on-call rotation, and they believe it's their responsibility to keep them passing regardless of what tools are available to them, right? And my team, we try and look pretty closely at the sig-CLI tests. We have our own dashboard. We've found some flaky tests this release. We fixed them. Now everything looks green. It does take like 1 minute a day. Someone has to look at that dashboard, but.
And that's the sig-CLI specific dashboard, right?
That's the sig-CLI specific dashboard. And another thing. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I was just going to say, so a win would be to have every sig that has features or code in there to have their own dashboard to be able to at least have a view of that if they don't already.
Yeah, we made a push for that. I think most SIGs
do have it at this point.
Okay.
And for the last release, at least, it was not, the big issue was, I felt that people were pretty responsive once we identified SIGs. Once you identify SIGs, it's sort of easy to, people were generally responsive in fixing those, or at least being under the impression that they had to go fix those. But a lot of the work is digging through large failures and trying to identify what the actual underlying problem is. So, there's some mechanisms we can use to automate this, but those hard problems of everything just timed out and we have to go find it is, I feel a little intrinsic.
Yeah, okay. Totally. I agree with that statement 100%.
Okay. So just in my experience, that's just always hard. There's just no good way to do that. So we'll have to find an okay way to do that.
One thing that was suggested, or Eric's team has suggested, is splitting out all the tests into test jobs. Or sorry, splitting out each SIG's group of tests into a test job. I think we talked about this before. And then that way it's unambiguous. Like if the test job is timing out, it's like there's only one SIG in there. That SIG gets to figure out why their test job is timing out.
I am such a huge fan of that idea. And I know we talked about it being maybe more infrastructure costs or whatnot. But how do we actually make that happen? Because to me, that's one of the most enticing pieces of low-hanging fruit in this. And maybe it's not that low-hanging fruit, but that seems like a real win.
I started doing that for sig-CLI already. We got our first one in yesterday. I'm probably going to do next week. I'll probably try and do 2 or 3 more, and then I can send out example PRs. Maybe that's the right way of doing it.
Okay.
I have the idea to isolate the test itself from cluster lifecycle, like bring up a cluster and tear down the cluster. My current idea is to have a pool of cluster, like healthy cluster, and each job can just grab the cluster, run the test, turn back the cluster. There is a side process that can clean up the cluster and recycle them. So the current issue is the test might be running only for like 10 minutes for each job, but it requires turn up the whole cluster, turn down the whole cluster, and then that can be flaky, and that can cost a lot of time. So it's not quite feasible at this point, but if we can isolate it out, like by each job, only run that specific tests. That's
I lost audio. Did anybody else lose audio?
We,
I'm okay.
They can hear.
Okay.
I like that.
yeah.
Can somebody say something?
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah.
Ah, man. Ooh.
Hello.
We can hear and see you, Jace.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, trying now maybe?
Hello.
Oh, okay, it's going through my speakers.
Can you hear this now?
I can, yeah. There's a giant storm that just blew in, lightning and everything, so. All right. So I totally lost the last part of what was being said there, Sen,
Yeah.
about polar test clusters.
I was talking about, I just throw out the idea that we can isolate the test run itself from bring up and down and tear down the cluster. So currently it might not be feasible to like explode jobs. Like currently we have like 400 jobs. If we explode it for each sig, it will be like 1,000 jobs. And that also required to have like additional resource, like additional GCP like projects to running the jobs, and yeah.
I think it's a great idea to try and isolate that stuff away, so the test results are just from the tests.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we separate the jobs, SIGs into separate jobs, it will make certain things more painful, like the cutting the release branch tests is going to be just a lot more work.
Yeah.
We're probably going to have to automate that somehow or something, templatize it.
I could probably get Azure resources to do, spin up clusters and whatnot. I don't know. Would that be helpful?
That requires some code work to split out the test run and the app cluster.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Just we'd have to modify the test infrastructure to be able to use that.
I think we want to do in Q4.
Yeah, let's maybe we could do that, because I have resources. They're probably not. I don't know. I'm not going to say much in this recording, but maybe let's explore that for this 1.9. See what we can come up with. Okay, so let's move on. Does everybody feel like we have a pretty good idea of some hit points for how we save ourselves with testing and test infrastructure? Cool.
Maybe not for 1.8. I think we have good strategic ideas. It's still not clear to me how we're going. Who's going to look at the broken upgrade tests and how are those going to get fixed?
That's me.
Okay. Are you planning on just like guerrilla style, like looking at those tests and then tracking down the owners and?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let me know if you need help in that, or if you get stuck.
Yeah, my general strategy last release was just sit down and bang my head against those logs until something makes sense, and if they don't, then bug people internally. So, well, yeah, thanks. I'll reach out if I'm confused or anything.
We can chat back when you're out.
And don't be afraid to lean on me too. I'm happy to be a go-to or a pester or anything else in terms of any of the SIGs. So, and okay. All right, well, let's see what we can do. It sounds like Sen's got some good stuff in flight, and anything we can do to I'm starting a to-do list at the bottom of our meeting minutes. So if there's anything in there that you want to put your name around and claim, that's great. So, so this is really interesting, this next bullet point, keeping track of pull requests and feature issues and what's also in the features repo. So it's unfortunate, or maybe fortunate, I don't know, Ihor, that the meeting yesterday that you weren't there or weren't able to fully participate, because it was interesting to hear the sort of complaints around tracking feature work and is this a stabilization release or not. And really what it came down to was stuff's going in the release currently, and that's sort of driving the release feel and theme more than actually anything that we desire as far as it being one type of release or another. So I see this as a risk because right now we need to be able to track all this work. And I think that Joe Beta was correct in saying that there's probably a lot of things happening, or maybe it was Bob Wise actually, said that there's probably a lot of things happening that we're not tracking. And I want to kind of bring this up as something to see what we can do about it. So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I hasn't been able to join meeting yesterday. I've been able to join, but I haven't been able to really participate in it. So from my perspective, we have to continue working on the features repo, and features repo is the major and the single source of truth in terms of the features. We also require some sort of dashboard or some tool where we'll visualize that. We had and have a features tracking spreadsheet. And we had it since 1.3 release, where we've been breaking all the major efforts related to the current release, especially in terms of the features. And this spreadsheet has been really required not only by us as their features managers, the product managers, but also by some third parties, like people who've been working on the docs, people who've been working on the release notes, and so on. It will be much more complicated for all the parties to receive all the necessary information from GitHub, because there are it could be much more complicated than receiving some from the single point like the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet has been continuously updated manually by me in every release, every iteration. That means it could lack in some sort of data. So it hasn't been directly in sync, like automated sync with the features, right? But again, we have all the update data in the features repo. So what could be our goal? I'm not sure that we were able to solve this question for this iteration 1.8, but it would be great. We'll develop some sort of automated tool on how can we generate this sort of spreadsheets, or to have some web dashboard or something like that for tracking features. There have been some attempts to do that previously. There have been some sort of tools to generate it or to track these features in the web dashboard, but at the current moment we still have features repo and manual updated spreadsheet. So that are the main concerns. So I'm doing all my best to keep this spreadsheet up to date, but again, that can be some human question.
Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, I looked at this. I've used this spreadsheet through several releases, and I found it really useful because it is a way to visualize it, and the features repo doesn't do that. I think the concern was people feeling like that might be the record of note when it's not. And the features repo is a record of note, just like you said. So we just need to communicate that more widely so that people understand that is a tool we use for the visualization management of the release, not to put bounds around what is actually in the features repo. So last check, it was not updated. We may want to just reconcile Caleb's exhaustive list with what is currently in the features repo spreadsheet and make sure that those two things are aligned. And then the other, I mean, this is a broader question though, is that right now pull requests are being merged into the code all the time. And how do we really fully tie the code that's going into head right now versus what is actually in those features repo entries? And I mean, we've had the problem with issues tracking and the features repo. like my concern is that there's a lot of stuff moving that we don't necessarily know what it is or what it's for. And I want to have a better handle on what that is.
Well, I'd like to also hear some suggestions because I don't have any exact vision. How can we do that except of the manual tracking, but it will be like big pain for us. It won't be possible to track all the PRs with some code. They track some features.
Yeah.
Again, like we're at SIG-PM, like myself, SIG-PM leads and SIG-PM representative from some specific SIGs going to track that, but again, it's mostly manual. So we don't have any sort of automated tool. It would be great to hear like, some suggestions how can we automate it.
Agreed. Let's open the floor. Anybody have any ideas about this?
I have been hoping that people would poke holes in my straw person proposal for adopting something that looks like Rust's RFC process to combine the design docs along with basic motivation and example for new changes. I have yet to receive feedback on that.
Okay, so we need to, I'm going to put in the to-dos is let's get that doc circulated.
Hey, quick question. Did we ever get around to actually writing down what the current process is? I know that there's like, you know, I informally sort of understand what I have to do to get a change into Kubernetes, but I don't think that was ever formally documented.
No, and that is 100% my fault. Because that was on my plate to do, and it's something that has fallen behind some of the other things that have happened. Ihor and I did meet to talk about that, and Ihor does have some great starter documents. Which Ihor, would you be willing to just share those with the group in the mailing list?
Sure. And let me find them. Yeah, the job has already been started, but we have to finalize that. It would be great if we'll do that finalized by some milestone.
Yes. 100% agree. Let's finalize those docs.
There are a collection of docs about getting your feature into Kubernetes. One is in the context of during the release cycle, and there is documentation about the features repo itself. Both of those documentation sources may need to be updated to reflect the Kubernetes.
Right, we have the documented process like from our process in the features repo itself. It's in the readme of the features repo, and the document that Jason is speaking about, that's the draft that has been discussed a few months ago at one of the SIG-PM meetings. That was the draft that I have initially prepared. It has been reviewed by SIG-PM, also Caleb, as far as I remember, been one of the most active contributors and reviewers for the document. So we have also proceeded with Jason to review and to work on that document afterwards, and I suppose it's a good time to start working on that right now. I have shared a document. I should link in our chat.
Great, thank you. So in my mind, I mean, in a perfect world, you should be able to look at any PR and know exactly what features repo thing it's tracking toward, or some other thing. That may be aspirational at best, given the limitations of GitHub and the fact that there's a lot of varying ways that people document what's actually happening in their PRs. But I think we should try and shoot toward more visibility in that regard, without becoming draconian about it. I don't know. I would love, just like Ihor, I would love to have some description or some idea about how to approach this. I mean, these procedural things are good, and getting documentation for process is good, but there's still, at the end of the day, you still have people who are approvers, approving changes into the code that may not necessarily looking at the features repo or looking at what the core issue is that it's trying to solve, or it may be more tactical or whatnot. So those are the cases that concern me.
Yeah, and I've tried to bring this up a couple of times. Our current governance structure is there's only a loose and mostly incidental intersection between the SIG structure and the contributor ladder. So the owners and improvers process is very heavily geared towards the contributor ladder itself. There are owners aliases, but those are usually used for reviewing and don't have merge powers. And the usage is also not consistent across the SIGs. So that seems to be, at least in my opinion, a challenge of governance, that these two power structures do not intersect in a consistent way across the project.
That seems true. Does anybody else have any opinions on that? All right, so I'll assume that quiet means that people are at least on board with the premise there. So there is that thing that Aaron has out there, that PR. Did that get merged? I've been so sick the last several days. I have not been on top of things as much as I wish I could. Oh, did everybody freeze? No. Oh, still not merged. Okay. Well, at any rate, there's Aaron has this PR out there, I believe, somewhere. If anybody wants to paste it in chat, that would be helpful. All right. Did I lose audio, or is it just everybody's being quiet?
Everybody's muted.
Okay.
We can hear you. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so there's that. Caleb, I mean, this is sort of, you've got a sort of overlapping series of concerns here that seem pretty relevant to this challenge. What is something tactical? I mean, because honestly, in the lack of a steering committee and the state we are in terms of governance, getting large scale policy type stuff through, or alignment of the contributor ladder and SIG structure is probably not as likely. But we have a tactical problem in 1.8. What would you suggest would be a way to start enacting this, or to get some traction early?
I mean, I don't actually know. Maybe starting the release notes draft early could help force SIGs to think about the things they've scheduled to land already. But in terms of tracking at the PR level, I don't know. I mean, we could run like GitHub queries and look at things every day or every week, but I don't know what we do tactically without actual guidance from the steering committee.
Okay. I mean, let me just ask a question. Am I paranoid to have this concern, or does this seem like a real issue?
Oh, no. You're not paranoid at all. I think every release I have watched, there has been at least one PR that has slipped through that has been somewhat concerning towards the tail end of the release. So it's not an unreasonable concern, although I guess without the guardrails, there's not really a lot of sticks on our end to prevent such a change from slipping in.
Right. But just visibility, I think, is the power we have. So that's, at least we can figure that out. I'm gonna ask around and see how other people deal with this, because this is a problem that a lot of regulatory driven orgs have to deal with. You know, just verifying and validating what goes into a release, because you have to be aware of, you know, somebody slips in some code, and there's actually, not that it would happen on a project likely, but there have been some recent examples of infiltration of bad code into open source projects, and I want to make sure that we're not open to that sort of attack vector as well. So, so one thing, so let's move on. Role documentation needs improvement in some cases. And partly that is that we've defined new roles that don't necessarily have a full idea what they are. So for example, Swarna's role is new for this release. And I want to make sure that as a risk that we're trying to mitigate this and document as we go, and also just make sure that as a team that we're acting like a team and that we support each other in any ways we can, in terms of if you feel stuck with something you're doing, you can reach out to anybody else in the team. And even if you don't know how to help, at least we'll try and get help. So I think that'll be core reinforcement for everybody's roles. Anybody in a role currently, I mean, Swarna, you obviously, but is anybody in a role currently that they are seriously concerned that they don't have any idea about what they're supposed to be doing?
I vaguely approach that sentence. I don't really have a strong sense of what I'll be doing through this, but I'm not concerned about it either, because I could say I'm meeting up with the previous branch manager today, and I'm sure it will kind of come out in the woodwork.
Fair enough. I guess, yeah, so to tailor that, is anybody in a role that they are concerned they don't have the resources to fulfill it properly, or that they don't know who to reach out to? Okay, that is encouraging. That gives me hope that everybody at least has a starting place for what they need. If at any point in this release you're in a role and you feel overwhelmed, you need help, if there's anything, you come to me and I will make that priority number one to make sure that you get what you need. We all have lives outside of this. We all have jobs outside of this. So it's important to maintain work-life balance. So if there's a point in the release where you're struggling with the things that you're asked to do in terms of time or whatever, just come to me and we'll figure it out. I promise each and every one of you that we'll make that a top priority. So, and so we sort of had the stabilization discussion a little bit. Is there anybody here who feels strongly that they know that what this differentiation is enough to start helping me document it? I mean, I think that's a good choice.
Yeah, if you're going to document that, let's do that together, because I've already started like an initiative to document it. We have discussed that question with Apana and Caleb in like a separate CPM thread, and it seems that we really lack the formal definition what is the stabilization release and like the non-stabilization of feature-oriented release. At Kubernetes 1.6, that has been formally the first stabilization release, we've been focused on having more beta and stable features than alpha features. And 1.7 is the different one. It's like more feature-oriented release where we had more alpha features than beta and stable. So as we have discussed at the Leadership Summit, it could be called like the TikTok model. And per brand grant, it has been like since the early years of Kubernetes, but since this year, we're going to formalize that and like define that. This release is going to be stabilization. This release is going to be feature-oriented. And yeah, so we have faced that not really everybody, even we don't really understand every single point. How can we define this release as the feature-oriented or stabilization release? What are the criteria to fill, and so on. So it has to be documented. I'm going to work on that, and if you're going to work with me and with a partner and with other volunteers, it would be great.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary that we do that. So if you set any time up to work on that, please CC me and I will make it a priority to attend that whatever time. So don't even worry about time zones or whatever.
Yeah, okay. So my initial plan was to start working on that during the weekend, like the first early draft, and like simply with some bullet points and so on. I would like to work on that closely with the volunteers and with you personally on the next week. So ideally, I would like to test this procedure with 1.8 to get it like completely GA for 1.9. So with 1.9, we are going to have the absolutely formalized procedure, because it's a bit too late for 1.8 to have like some major changes in the process, but it's a good sandbox with 1.8 to test it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so if you want me to do anything even over the weekend, please send that over my way. I'll be glad to.
Perfect. Yeah. And if anybody here can like help us, suggest us any ideas, any thoughts, it would be great.
All right, we're running out of time. Visibility, I think, is just generally could somebody who knows where all of the dashboards are, because I know there's like 6, could you please put a link to those dashboards in the meeting notes here under visibility? That would be tremendously helpful.
Probably we have a single web page, like single GitHub page, where all these dashboards are listed as the links.
Cool.
We just need a dashboard for our dashboards. Yes.
There are a lot of them, and you can paste in the link we used for 1.7 for a bunch of the relevant dashboards.
Great.
Through this process.
That would be super helpful. I mean, I have bookmarks for a lot of them, but I'm sure there's probably some out there that I'm missing. I just want to make sure that we have them all in one place.
Yeah.
And
it's mostly the submit queue and test grid.
What's that?
It's mostly just the submit queue and test grid.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and so what I'd like to do too is I would love to have a walkthrough test grid. I don't know who would be most apt to give me that walkthrough, but
I can do that.
Okay.
And paste links to.
Who said that actually? Was that
me?
Sen.
Oh, Sen. Okay. Fantastic. All right. And I think that's pretty much it. I think we've done a good job reviewing the gaps and whatnot. There's a bullet point here just to review the schedule. Just keep a track of that and make sure that we have those milestones in your own personal calendars as well. And the next thing that we have to do, which is cut an alpha, which is going to be interesting because I don't think the tests are great. You had something, Eric? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn? All right. Well, I want to thank you again for all your valuable time and contributions, and let's make this awesome. And I think we have an outstanding team to get this done. So thank you all, everybody, and have a great rest of your day and weekend.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
Bye.